And with that, it brings us to our last keynote speaker for today, Léopoldine Huyghues Despointes, and I'm mispronouncing the French, as I mispronounced the Finnish before, who is an activist and advocate, as well as actress, writer, and producer. She's also an honorary advisor on disability rights for Save Ukraine, the first speaker that you saw today, the founder of Save Ukraine. And I am giving the floor to you.
Thank you, my dear Tatiana, for giving me the floor. Mesdames et messieurs, my name is Léopoldine Huyghues Despointes. I'm a French-American citizen, expert, advisor, and activist on international disability rights. I'm the former VP of the World Disability Union, collaborated with the NGOs and governments. I'm also a filmmaker, but the first day of the war, I dropped everything I was doing to be at service for the children of Ukraine. I'm also here today on behalf of Save Ukraine as the honorary advisor for disability rights, Mykola Kuleba, who is a war hero, amazing person who works with his heart and soul for the children of Ukraine. So, as mentioned, Mykola is the former commissioner for children's rights with the president of Ukraine from 2014 to 2021. He's the main coordinator of evacuation of vulnerable children from hotspots all over Ukraine and provision of humanitarian support to child protection hubs around Ukraine. I'm very happy to announce that as of yesterday, Save Ukraine evacuated and put to safety more than 30,000 children and women, vulnerable ones. I'd like to share, before going into a more conversation about trafficking, I'd like to share a few personal stories of my recent trips to Ukraine during wartime. One story out of 100. I was in East Lviv to greet orphans and disabled children, and one of them was a disabled teenager who had a terrible car accident a year ago. And he was in a rehabilitation center that was directly bombed at, and they tried to protect him with pillows. He's traumatized. He's now in Munich, in a nice place, and he is continuing his rehabilitation, which is a really great news. This morning, again, we arranged 3 buses for 103 children from age 3 to 17. To be transferred in a safe place in Italy. I'd like actually to congratulate one of our team members here, one of our operation manager, Mateusz, who did an amazing job on this operation. The children are, of course, traumatized. They're from Bucha and Kyiv region. Because we always are very alert on trafficking issues, we took special measures on this operation. These children are direct targets for traffickers who abuse of the situation. The war against Ukraine is a war against women, and it's a war against children. It's a war against the most vulnerable ones. Our mission at Save Ukraine is to evacuate children and their families, to find short and long-term solutions, but also to protect them from trafficking. The first step of our mission is emergency assistance. The goal is to evacuate children and families from hotspots, like I mentioned, and provide them with emergency medical care, psychological care, financial and legal assistance. The second is resettlement. The goal is to provide independent housing, food, healthcare, psychological support, education, employment to the new families so that they can adapt to their new environment within 1 year. The third step is, of course, family reunification. A lot of the children are sent abroad without their parents for safety. The fourth step is, of course, reconstruction. Save Ukraine's team has set up hotlines to support incoming and outgoing calls, which is about 7 to 1,300 calls per day for evacuation issues, accommodation issues, psychological support, and alerting on trafficking issues. With a refugee flow of more than 5 million people in the last 7 weeks, human trafficking testimonies and reports are alarming. The Russian Federation's attacks in Ukraine have caused the displacement of children, putting them in frightening danger, creating emotional distress and trauma that will last a lifetime. I have seen this in my own eyes. I go to Ukraine every other week. I've been able to help some children personally who open up to me, being on a wheelchair myself. And yes, since the beginning of the war, on a good note, Save Ukraine's results are impressive. About more than 30,000 families and children evacuated, as I mentioned before. Many disabled, some orphaned, some with foster families, many victims of war crimes. More than 40,000 families and children supported with food items, more than 23,000 housing assistance, and more than 19,000 consultation provided, psychological, and whatever is actually needed. I'd like to now emphasize on the trafficking issues. I'll start with a testimony I received a few weeks ago from actually a French Gilets jaunes who reached out to me on social media to alert me on a specific case. This is his statement. I spent about 10 days at the Ukraine border in the Medica refugee center. I joined a group of former soldiers to help on the spot. We were quickly informed of the problem of abductions of women and children. We decided to secure the camp and set up night and day patrol. We noticed that some cars were abandoned near the Medica camp, 2 of them near the railroad. Inside, there were many children's clothes scattered around, as well as food for children. On the side of the car, we found serflex, which is used for handcuffs. They were cut out already, so they were used. The size corresponded to small wrists. We alerted the police. I had to return to France in a hurry because of an armed dealer who had joined the group of 6 people at our expense. The group was warned by a contact on the spot of a raid by Interpol, but the person was arrested in Paris. Following this affair, I preferred to return as I did not feel safe anymore. This is one of many, many testimonies we receive. Trafficking is a weapon of war. An estimated 40 million persons are thought to be currently enslaved worldwide. Human trafficking is a fundamental violation of human rights that has been referred to by some as a form of modern-day slavery. Reported in nearly every part of the world, it reaps enormous profits for trafficking agents. Yet, despite growing political attention, legislation, and cross-organizational efforts to tackle the problem of human trafficking, it remains on the increase. Trafficking can therefore be argued to be an act motivated by political economic incentives. This has serious consequences for society, for development. Therefore, if a community loses a percentage of its population to traffickers, society inevitably suffers economic, social, and political losses. Furthermore, due to the fact that economic gain and freedom or choice are at the core of productivity, trafficking hinders international and national economic growth with a resulting increased cost to human welfare and profitability to non-state actors, demonstrating that the motivations of non-state actors must be understood and preventative measures taken. Now I'd like to emphasize on specific issues that will be addressed during the conferences. Of course, minorities are at risk. People with disabilities are vulnerable and need extra attention. First of all, to take care of them, we need proper training in civil volunteers. Being victims of prejudice and stereotypes, the whole disability conversation being so taboo, the community is a direct target for trafficking. We at Save Ukraine are close to another very involved foundation who has been very active in Ukraine for many years for LGBTQ rights, the Autorin Foundation, and being also victim of prejudice and stereotype, the LGBTQ community is also at high risks. Women, and we saw a lot of this, women are using social media as a tool to find a solution to get a job or housing when they get out of Ukraine, when they pass borders, because they don't find the necessary, the help they need, so they go on social media. And it puts them in an even more vulnerable situation. Traffickers are on the lookout for these desperate women. In my humble opinion, one of the solutions would be also obviously to make an awareness campaign, but also informing and educating NGOs and civil volunteers on the issues. The internet and social media is a danger zone. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, in Ukraine, 378,000 children are in need of support and care, particularly vulnerable children from the institutional care system. About 100,000 from 697 care centers, mainly orphanages, and about 70,000 under foster care. Those children are also direct targets to trafficking. Countries have taken impressive steps, but more needs to be done. Bilateral and multilateral cooperation needs to be enhanced to ensure that gaps are closed and challenges are overcome. We need to ensure proper cooperation and organization of frontline receiving refugees. Once again, more needs to be done. We need an international plan. Considering the fact that only 1% of trafficking victims are identified, which is the data from the joining efforts to protect the rights of trafficking persons at OSCE, we radically need to take action. Trafficking is an issue around the world, and Eastern countries are sadly affected. Indeed, local political economy factors contribute to the targeting of certain groups in this way. One of the direct actions at Save Ukraine, which we're actually currently building, are centers for victims of rape by Russian soldiers. These women and children are highly in danger because of the sexual violence that they have experienced. It is crucial to take action as the situation is preoccupying and complex. It is essential to build more centers for victims of war crimes inside Ukraine for justice to be made. It is imperative for witness experts to start interviewing victims of Russian crimes, which we're working on. We need to ensure that a proper cooperation and cohesion between government agencies, international organizations, NGOs, and make sure every one of them are aware of the real issues. A proper training for those willing to help, proper training of civilian volunteers, as I mentioned before. Now, let us work hand in hand and try not to leave anyone behind. I'd like, of course, to thank the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation, OSCE, ODIHR, Max, my team, and especially Tatiana for the incredible, incredible work you're doing to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Léopoldine, and thank you for bringing into focus the fact that civil society, NGOs actually need assistance and training. And I would like to happily announce that OSCE ODIHR is actually preparing such a training, actually a number of such trainings to assist all the efforts at the border areas as well as destination countries in identifying and supporting victims of trafficking from Ukraine. So feel free to also reach out to us, if you would like to have such a training, and we would be happy to invite you.